Big changes over the weekend.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Joined today by Jaron Spor. Used to cover the Oklahoma Sooners with me over at Sooners Wire, now covering all of college football with Athlon Sports. I wanted to call it Athlon Sports. It's very formal, this Athlon Sports. But Jaron, as we go into what is a very pivotal offseason for the Oklahoma Sooners, what do you think is the biggest question mark facing this team?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and just to put the caveat, like obviously tight end has been an issue, and so that's like the easy answer, but I don't want to take tight end because that's just too easy. I went back and forth between offensive line and wide receiver, but I'm ultimately going to go with wide receiver, and the only reason is because like I think Giovanni Gibson has a chance to be very good, but all the transfers they brought in, Josiah Martin, Keontez Lewis, Giovanni Gibson, like I mentioned, Isaiah Satanga, like they're all not really proven guys, or they're proven at a smaller level. Like Giovanni Gibson had a massive season last year, but it was the FCS level. And so now you're coming to the SEC. Now, one thing we see in the NFL all the time is you'll get a guy drafted from some small school, but he can play and they pop off in the NFL. So it's not saying that these guys aren't talented. It's just there's a big question mark there. And we saw how important the wide receiver room was last year when you lose 5 of them. So you need someone to step up. Obviously, Deion Burks is back, and that hopefully he can stay healthy because he proved he was really good when he was on the field. Then you hope the younger guys show some things. Ivan Carrion showed something in the bowl game. So we'll see there, and Zion Kearney as well. But wide receiver, it's just a question mark because we just don't know about the new 5 transfers that come in. And then Jaden Gibson too. Like the patella injury is not an easy injury to recover from, especially as a wide receiver. So who knows what he will be like.
Yeah, when you have a guy like Jaden Gibson who relies so much on his athleticism and his explosiveness, coming off a knee injury isn't so straightforward, especially at the wide receiver position. But as much as I'm optimistic about where the wide receivers are headed, it's a prove it year for Emmett Jones and that group, because as much as wide receivers and their injuries played a role in what happened in 2024, the lack of development for some of these younger guys when they got opportunities to get on the field and they didn't necessarily cash in on those opportunities, I think that was a pretty staggering revelation. I think everybody expected, hey, you got a guy like a Zion Kearney, a 4-star dude that showed out in high school. You'd think that given opportunity, he might be able to step up and make some impact plays, and he just wasn't able to do it. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of talent there, but still it has to prove it on the field. And I'm one of the more optimistic people that you'll find covering sports, but even for me, this is very much a prove it year for everybody on Oklahoma's staff and on Oklahoma's roster on offense after what we saw in 2024. For me, it's offensive line. I don't know what to expect out of this offensive line. I think there is talent there. You've got some really incredible players that you're bringing in a Michael Fasusi and a Ryan Foje, but can they emerge early in their careers and be full-time players or rotational players? That's the question. You do have some blue chip prospects that have just not performed on the field just yet in a Jake Taylor or Jacob Sexton. So there's talent to come to fruition. It just hasn't done it yet. I like the addition of Derek Simmons, but again, like you talked about with Giovanni Gibson and a Keontez Lewis, got to make that big jump.
Yeah.
And if he can make the jump, he can be an impactful player. Right now you have Troy Everett at center, and the rest of it to me is a question mark.
Yeah, no, and that was my thing with the offensive line is I feel like you have a deeper room than last year because I think you have 8, 9, maybe even 10 guys that can play on the offensive line. The issue is I think they're all about the same level of player. Obviously, I think Fasusi and Foje could be stars, but as true freshmen, you can't really count on that. So I think you got all average to good players. So finding that best 5, as Bill Beamo always likes to call it, that's going to be the key. Which 5 click the best? Now, the one thing is if one's not playing well, you have the depth now where you can just put another one in and plug and play. But yeah, that's the big question mark with the offensive line is I feel like you have so many that are exactly the same level of player, and then trying to figure out where to play them and stuff like that is going to be the hard part. And not only the same level of player, I think they're also like, they can play multiple positions. So Are they better at guard, or are they better at tackle, or are they better with this guy at tackle and he's a guard? I don't know. That's the big question mark with offensive line to me.
Yeah, and you mentioned tight end earlier on in this segment, and I think that is easy pickings for a lot of people. I've argued that tight end isn't as big of a deal because you look at what Ben Arbuckle did at Washington State. Those guys played just over 300 snaps in a season. That's not a lot compared to what Bauer Sharp and Austin Stogner did the last couple of years, where they averaged over 700 snaps.
Yeah.
So, but it is a position that you need to figure something out. So as you look at tight end, like what does Oklahoma do? Because it's been a problem since Braden Willis back in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you hope
since he had a breakout year. The way that I phrased that made me sound like Braden Willis was a problem in 2022. Since he broke out in 2022, 2023, 2024, tight end was very underwhelming.
Yeah, obviously, you hope Devon Mitchell takes that step, but him not even getting a snap in the bowl game was kind of like eye-raising, because we kept hearing how great he's doing in practice and leading up to that, and he's this devastating blocker and all this stuff, and he can't get one snap in a bowl game. Like, that was a kind of eye-raising. Now, I will also say I'm surprised that Ivan Carrion hasn't made the move there, at least to a tight end, because he's so big, and if you could just put muscle on him, he could be a perfect tight end. Now, I will say Arbuckle does kind of use that flex tight end. Like, we kind of saw Mark Andrews early in his career kind of line up as a receiver more than a tight end. So maybe that's where Carrion can slide to. But, yeah, I mean, you go look at the transfer portal also for them, and it's a bunch of guys that not only played at a lower level, but didn't produce much at a lower level. At least the receivers, produced at a high level at the lower level. But I don't know what they're going to do at tight end. That is, you have to hope. I mean, Joe John Finley's put all of his eggs in Devon Mitchell's basket, and he has to be the player they thought he was going to be. And, one of my favorite phrases, your 5 stars have to be 5 stars. And so he's got to be that.
And it's been a minute since Oklahoma's 5 stars have been 5 stars.
Yeah.
You've had a Bray Walker, who was a 5-star a while back, that didn't pan out. Spencer Rattler didn't pan out for you. Neither did Caleb Williams, really.
Yeah.
And then now you're kind of putting the eggs in the Foje or the Michael Fasusi basket on the offensive line. You're waiting for a PJ Adebawari breakout. You're waiting for a Peyton Bowen breakout. The same is true for Devon Mitchell. I mean, the talent is there. The size is there. The physicality is there. Now it's just he has to put it all together and go emerge and take advantage of his opportunities and go be a breakout player. I think the talent's there. It's just a matter of earning his spot and earning, because I don't think that a Cade McIntyre or a Caden Helms have the talent to keep him off the field. And I don't think any of the transfer guys have the talent to keep him off the field. It's just a matter of all that, to me, is insurance if Mitchell doesn't emerge and take the step this year.
And it sounded like a lot of his issues last year were maturity issues. He talked about it. Even Venables talked about it. Just adjusting to the college life, going to classes, being at meetings on time. And that stuff is, an adjustment for a lot of people. I know my first year, when they told me you didn't have to be at every class, I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't go to some classes. And I struggled that first semester. But that's just the thing. Like, as long as he can mature and then develop this offseason and shed some of the weight that he had, like you said, the talent's there. If he can do all the off-the-field stuff, I don't see why he's not the starter next year, because you can't start someone else over him, because it's not going to be a talent deal. The only reason why they would start over him is if they were doing the right stuff off the field. And so if he can fix that, he should be your starter.
And we've seen under Brent Venables how that stuff does matter.
Yes.
But at some point, they're going to have to get my man on the field and just let him go play and see what happens, because I think he's going to be too good to keep off the field for too much longer. We're going to talk about what a wild weekend it was in the sports world. I know this isn't Locked On Mavs or Locked On Lakers, but Jaron's a Lakers fan. I'm a Mavs fan. So we'll touch a little bit on the Luka Doncic nonsense here in the next segment, but we got a lot to talk about coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.